continuously stopped from moving forward because of litigation. We need to somehow come together and decide what is good for Kenya. And what is good for Kenya is good for the citizens. And I believe that, sometimes we're pitted against each other and we lose the plot. The duty that we have as citizens and as leaders in all three arms of government is to steer Kenya in the right direction, because the citizens want that. The citizens need that. The citizens are begging us to do that. So sugar industry is just one industry, but every sector of this country requires us to shift from doing things the old way to a new way, to doing things the devil's way to doing it the godly way. We're building churches, mosques, temples, but we've morally lost the plot. We are nowhere. I think if heaven were going to take a census, very few Kenyans would be there. So we need to start doing things right. And I really thank the member for bringing this, and I hope that the Ministry of Agriculture will do the right thing by the industry of sugar. No more importation. Let's get our metric tons up. Let's boost our industries. Let's get our factories working. And if we can't do it ourselves, let's bring in the public-private partnerships that can steer the industry in the right direction. Because you know what? Sometimes if we can't do it, let's get out of the kitchen and bring in the chef that can actually cook the dish that all Kenyans would want to enjoy. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me an opportunity to contribute to this motion brought by Honorable Nabulindo. Mr. Speaker, sugar remains one of the goods in this country whose supply is lower than the demand. Basic economics tells you where the supply is lower than the demand, the pricing must be right. Yet, we still have our farmers choking because of importation of sugar. Before we even introduce new policies, Mr. Speaker, I think it's a matter of goodwill. It's not for lack of policy, but it is purely goodwill. Ask yourself, when sugarcane is actually being produced, I come from a sugarcane growing area, there is generation of electricity. That electricity in most factories is more than enough for their own factory that they can be able to supply it to the grid at a much cheaper price. Then you find one of the policies is like a case that happened in Mumias. They were producing power. They were forced to sell all that power at a cheaper rate to KPLC and buy it at a much higher rate. So they are producing their own power. They are not allowed by law to utilize it. They are supposed to send it to the grid and buy it at a higher rate. It simply does not make sense. Every single year, we create an artificial shortage. We license a few people. We give them the opportunity to go and import. When they bring it here, the pricing is not right. So I actually want to support this bill, this motion, that the government, if they are keen on improving the livelihoods, especially from Kenyans who are living in sugarcane growing areas, that we must begin to invest, including in the maintenance of the factories that we have. Most of the factories that are producing below capacity is because the machinery that we have are as old as this nation. For example, in Sony Sugar, I think that machine was bought way before independence. They are still struggling with it. So you find it is operating at about 50% or less. There are issues of regulations. Every other time we try to bring in proper regulations here, they are frustrated by the same government. And it's the same cartels that are actually going around. So I want to applaud my colleague who has brought on this motion, that indeed it is about time that we make this country more independent and every single region be looked at for its uniqueness. For sugarcane growing areas, the investment that they require, amongst many other things. If we invest in sugarcane, for example, in my area, I have seen the sugar factories. They fix our roads, they fix the infrastructure. So it means if we allow them to produce to capacity and stop the importation, they get the right pricing. It will even reduce the amount of money that the government still invests through Ministry of Roads to improve the infrastructure, building bridges and things like that. Some of us are who we are today because of sugarcane growing. I personally went to school because of sugarcane. In fact, that time, as long as you had the cane on your farm, you would simply walk to the factory and they'd give you authority to go and pick money from the bank and have the sugarcane in the farm as a guarantee to ensure that you are educated. Some of us would not be here today. So I think I want to support this, that indeed it is about the time the House completely resolves that the Ministry of Agriculture and Livestock put money where it actually should be. I beg to support. Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Wanyonyi, you want to contribute to this? Honorable Tim Wanyonyi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the sugar industry in this country has actually brought people to abject poverty. Factories, Mr. Speaker, they ceased to pay farmers many years ago, and they have sugarcane on the farms rotting away, or sugarcane delivered at the factories and they are never paid. We have a big problem, Mr. Speaker, especially in the Western and Nyanza region. Nzoia Sugar Factory, Mumias Sugar Factory, these factories were functioning, Mr. Speaker, and those days when they were paying farmers and people were thriving, you could see even in the markets and everywhere was doing very well. But there came a group of conmen, Mr. Speaker, the middlemen. They are the ones now who interfered with the sugar industry. They started negotiating things that did not exist and made sure that the factories were paying them and not the farmers. So, Mr. Speaker, we believe that the other thing is that the government and political interference also, Mr. Speaker, dealt a big blow to these factories because over and over they will, Mr. Speaker, fire competent managers and hire political managers who come in who have no idea how to manage the factory and going forward. I remember there was a man who was functioning in Zoya, Mr. Speaker. When he was there for a short period, factory started paying farmers on time, and the factory now they were milling and then selling sugar, and then the political interference came about because people wanted to recruit a local person who had no idea to manage the factory, Mr. Speaker, and that brought a lot of problems. And up to now, I don't think these factories will ever be revived. There's no, even the government keep on pumping money there, it's just a waste of time. We better find a solution, a lasting solution to these factories, either, and we passed a bill here, Mr. Speaker, to privatize and hand over these factories to strategic partners who can bring in money and revive the factories. The way West Kenya is functioning, the way Mutahi is functioning, these two factories, Mr. Speaker, have no sugarcane farms, but they are milling and they are getting sugarcane from all over the place, and they get and pay the farmers directly. And that is, Mr. Speaker, that is where we find that this thing going on in the Mumias, Shuka, Nzoia, and others, Sony. We have find the factories suffering because of this, Mr. Speaker. And for us moving forward, I think the government should just get out of the sugar industry and sell all the shares to a private, to a strategic partner who can now come with the money, invest, and improve the factories, and then, Mr. Speaker, revive them and they'll start working. There are people who are ready and willing, but sometimes the negotiation takes long and take a wrong turn because there are people demanding for kickbacks before even putting pen to paper. So this is something that also, Mr. Speaker, has brought a lot of problems, and this is we have not had these problems in the coffee, tea sector, because there, Mr. Speaker, they are very, very well managed, and you find that farmers are directly involved in the management of the factories, but you find the sugar, Mr. Speaker, the political appointees and all those people who come without any knowledge of how to manage a factory, they run them down, and this is something that we need to look at, Mr. Speaker. Thank you very much for giving me a chance also to contribute on this.
Thank you. The Honorable Zamzam.
Asante sana Mheshimiwa Spika, na mimi niweze kuongezea katika mjadala huu wa leo. Wakulima wengi wamekosa ile ari ya kuweza kurudi mashambani kulima, Mheshimiwa Spika, na ndio maana tunasema wapewe nafasi katika kuweza kupeleka mambo ya factory ya miwa ili waweze kuangalia haki yao, Mheshimiwa Spika. Mheshimiwa Spika, wakipewa mwanya huu wataweza kukaa pamoja na wale wahusika, wakaweza kujua haki zao za kimsingi, haki zao za ukulima, haki zao za miwa, na upanzi wa miwa unaangaliwa vizuri, na mazao yakitoka pia wanapata faida nzuri, Mheshimiwa Spika. Mheshimiwa Spika, ukiangalia makampuni mengi ya sukari yamefungwa kwa sababu wenyewe kwanza walikuwa hawana mwongozo mzuri katika zile factory zao, na kulikuwa na utepetevu mkubwa sana, na wengi walikuwa wakinyanyasa wakulima. Ndio maana unaona wakulima walirudi nyuma, Mheshimiwa Spika, wakaweza kuacha kupanda miwa, Mheshimiwa Spika, na ndio maana factory nyingi ukapata zimefunga. Lakini mimi nataka kusema hivi, mkulima yoyote, si wa miwa tu, hata Mombasa, Mheshimiwa Spika, sisi tuna wale ambao wanapanda korosho, na tungeomba serikali vile inavyosukuma sehemu zingine katika ukulima, tunawaunga mkono, lakini tunasema pia wasiangalie sehemu moja tu. Mimi kama Mama Zamzam na support wakulima wa sukari, na ningeomba pia mkulima wangu wa korosho, mkulima wangu wa nazi, na yeye pia aweze kuangaliwa, kwa sababu zote zinaleta rasilimali katika Kenya. Na ukiangalia ukulima kama wa nazi, Mheshimiwa Spika, nazi zatolewa nje kutoka India, kutoka China, sisi tuzitumia wakati kuna ukulima ndani ya taifa letu. Ni kwa sababu hawaangaliwa, hawashughulikiwi, Mheshimiwa Spika. Kwa hiyo mimi nataka niseme, ndugu yangu na Brindo, asante kuleta mjadala huu wa kuweza kutetea ukulima wa sukari, na tujue pia hawa wenye factory wanatengeza pesa nzuri sana, waweze kutoa mafunzo kwa hawa wakulima, waweze kuwasaidia, waweze kushirikiana na wao kwa ukaribu, ndio mkulima ataelewa kuwa mazao yangu nikitoa, nikipeleka, kweli hakika kile ninachostahili kupata ni hiki, na kitanipa moyo kuweza kuzidi kupanda miwa na kuweza kulima miwa, Mheshimiwa Spika. Kwa hiyo mimi namuunga mkono ndugu yangu, na nasema wakulima wote Kenya, na nimeona kuna mswada ambao utakuja hapa, Mheshimiwa Spika, sikupenda kujadili saizi, lakini ningependa kusema hivi. Kenya iko katika hali ngumu sana, Mheshimiwa Spika, na sisi tunaangalia sehemu ambazo zinazalisha, tunataka kuzalisha. Kwa hiyo masuala ya kuweza kumfinya yule mkulima, sijui leseni ya hii, mtu yuko kule chini anapambana na mbolea, anapambana na mambo mengi, waachie wakulima waweze kupanda bila kudaiwa maleseni na nini, tuweze kuzalisha. Uchumi ukishashika vizuri, Mheshimiwa Spika, sasa tuweza kuzungumza masuala ya kugusa huku na huku. Lakini kwa sasa wakulima wako chini, wanastahili kupewa boost na serikali, wanastahili kuangaliwa masuala yao, kwa sababu hao ndo wanalisha taifa hili, Mheshimiwa Spika. Tutaweza kuzuia zile sukari zinatoka sijui Brazil, zingine zilikuja na sumu, zingine sijui zilikuja na nini ndani. Tutaweza kuzuia ikiwa tutampatia huyu mkulima nguvu ya kuweza kulima na aone mazao yake na apate kufaidi kwa mazao yake, Mheshimiwa Spika. Kwa hiyo mimi naunga mjadala huu. Asante sana.
Order.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I rise understanding order number 5. Honorable Speaker, having heard the mood of the House and the overwhelming support that this motion has received and the very pertinent issues raised by the motion, Honorable Speaker, and that we all agree, Honorable Speaker, I want to ask that understanding order number 5, that the mover be called upon to reply, Honorable Speaker.
Is that the mood of the House? The Honorable Nabulindo has a chance to reply.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, let me take this opportunity to thank all the honorable members who have diligently contributed to this motion with a lot of passion and a lot of insights to whatever was on the floor of the House. Mr. Speaker, the House has had a lot of facts and issues arising from the sugarcane industry, generally the sugarcane farming, growing, processing and sale of sugar in Kenya. I would like to thank the following members who diligently contributed to this motion. Shortly, Honorable Undo, Kaluma, Daud, Keinan, Okelo, Kihara, Omondi, and all the others who contributed in today's motion. Mr. Speaker, I will not go into much details because members have really talked well. They have come up very strongly in support of the issues that actually this motion seeks to achieve. And one of the speakers today, honorable member for Nairobi, Mheshimiwa Passaris, said that the problem, and I totally agree with her, the problem we have in this country with the sugar industry is cartels. Mr. Speaker, for a very long time, since the early 90s up to today, cartels have been ruling the sugar industry unabated. And it seems like they are above the law. The government cannot do anything about the sugar cartels. And maybe the biggest problem with that issue of cartels is because the people who are running these cartels are actually in the government. They fight to be in the government so that they can control these businesses. Mr. Speaker, you are my neighbor, and you know very well, since the collapse of the sugar industry, very many people, in fact, millions of people have sunk into poverty. Millions of people have sunk into poverty, and therefore, it is time that as a country and as a House of Parliament, we need to do something about the suffering of the sugarcane farmers. And Mr. Speaker, as I speak here today, this is not the first time that a motion or a bill about the sugar and sugarcane farming has come in this House. We have had numerous motions. We have had bills. We have had laws enacted in this country to manage the sugar industry. But nothing seems to be working. When you go in the government shelves, motions, bills, laws, regulations are gathering dust. Nobody seems to be paying attention to the farmers to the sugarcane farmers. And that has actually led some of us as leaders to be in a very awkward position, because we need to help the farmers. But the farmers, we don't get any assistance from the government. Mr. Speaker, as one of the speakers said, if we don't do something now, then we have to forget about the sugarcane industry. It is going to collapse totally in the next very few years. Because the factories that we have, like Mumias Sugar Factory, there is a glimpse of hope that someone is trying to revive. But the reason why our sugar cannot competitively compete in the market today is because our production is still, we still use very obsolete equipment to produce sugar. Nowadays, with the Chinese, Japanese, and European equipments, they are as small as this desk. But the obsolete equipment that we have in Mumias Sugar, one boiler is the size of the entire parliament. And that thing consumes electricity 100 times more than the modern equipment. So however much we try, we cannot produce sugar that is competitive in our modern market. Mr. Speaker, in conclusion, I would like to say, first, I thank the House, I thank the members for the support they have given this motion, and I hope the government will put into consideration all the sentiments by the members of parliament, and more so members who are really concerned about the sugarcane industry, the poverty that is killing the sugarcane farmers. It is time that we have to take action. We cannot continue talking about the sugarcane industry, the fail of the sugarcane industry, reviving the sugarcane industry. Mr. Speaker, we have talked about this thing for the last 30 years, but it seems we are not moving anywhere. It is now time the government has to be serious enough, look at the farmers and take the farmers seriously and empower them and let them benefit from sugarcane farming and sugarcane production. Mr. Speaker, with those few remarks, I beg to move. And before I sit down, I quote Standing Order 53(3), where I request the chair to defer the putting of this question to the next sitting, as will be scheduled by the House Business Committee. Thank you.
Well said, and thank you so much. The decision on this motion, as requested by the honorable member, will be made the next time the motion is slated for a decision in the order paper. Before we go to the next motion, members, join me in welcoming students from Savelberg Primary School, Kajiado Central in Kajiado County, students from Mirema Academy, Kasarani, Nairobi County. They are in the public gallery and they are welcome to follow proceedings this morning and to Parliament. Next order.
Order number 9, motion number 6 of 2024, comprehensive reform of the education bursary schemes to ensure free basic education in Kenya.
Honorable Esther Passaris.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I beg to move the following motion. That aware that Article 43(1), as read together with Article 53(1)(b) of the Constitution, provides that every person has the right to education and enshrines the right of every child to free, compulsory, basic education. Further aware that Kenya's Vision 2030 identifies education as a crucial component for transforming the country into a globally competitive nation, appreciating that bursaries play a vital role in supplementing funding for enhancing access to education, particularly for students from disadvantaged backgrounds, and contributes to the realization of universal basic education, noting that various education bursaries exist in the country, including ward-based level bursaries, county government's bursary, National Government Constituency Development Fund, the National Government Affirmative Action Fund, and the Presidential Secondary School bursaries, further noting that the evolution of bursary schemes from centralized to community-based administrations aimed to enhance education access, equity, and responsiveness to local needs, concerned that despite these efforts, the current bursary systems faces numerous challenges, including lack of standardized and transparent selection criteria, delay in disbursement of funds, and insufficient coverage of education costs, leading to gaps in support. Further concerned that these challenges have resulted in persistent disparities in education access, increased dropout rates, particularly in secondary schools, due to financial constraints and strains on household incomes as families struggle to meet educational expenses not covered by bursaries. Acknowledging that the implementation of community-based bursary schemes has not fully achieved its intended objective, hence the need to re-evaluate the current bursary system with a view to ensure equitable and free access to quality education for all students, cognizant that the duty of the government to provide free basic education can best be achieved by consolidating education funds and directly remitting to public schools. Now, therefore, this House urges that the government, through the Ministry of Education, in collaboration with the relevant stakeholders, undertakes a comprehensive overhaul of the education bursary system with a view to collapse all bursary schemes and allocate the funds to the State Department of Education for provision of basic education through capitation to be directly remitted to the schools. Honorable Speaker, Article 43(1)(f), every person has the right to education. Article 53(1), every child has the right to free, compulsory, basic education. I want to underscore the word compulsory. That means no child should be out of school. And as we talk today, so many children are out of school because they have not been able to pay their school fees, and the schools are sending them home, including Form 4 leavers. Yesterday, I dealt with a case in my county where a student was sent home by the school, and the student is in Form 4, and the reason he's sent home because the student owes, the parents of the student owes 130,000 to the school. Now, this parent is a mama fua. She cannot afford the 130, and the school felt, even though it's 2 months to the exams, that let's send her home, put pressure on the mother. You cannot get water out of a stone. There is no way that Mama Fua, who I spoke to yesterday, and she told me that, you know what, I'm not even staying in my own house. It's been locked because I can't pay rent. She's not able to get enough jobs. So the Constitution establishes education as a fundamental right to individuals, for individuals' development in the nation's future. So this child, I want to paint a picture here, what's happening to this child. All the bursaries, the mother received 5,000 from the Langata Member of Parliament, Honorable Jalango. The mother is going to receive now, because she came to my awareness, 53,000 were put on the full scholarship that we give quite a few students. As NGAF, we only get 1.9 million shillings per constituency per year. MPs can spend anything between 50 million and 70 million. The problem we're having right now is that our bursaries individually, cannot ensure that all the students in our respective wards, constituencies, or counties can actually have that compulsory education that is within their right in the Constitution. So we're actually not living to the mandate of the Constitution. And I know it's going to cost a lot of money, but if we scrap out corruption, right, we should be able to ensure that Vision 2030, right, will be attained. All students in Kenya will achieve that basic education from ECD, primary, junior secondary, and secondary. And then help will kick in. But if we don't do this, then we're going to end up with a situation that is going to actually fail us as a country. We have so many young children right now loitering in the various estates because they cannot go to school. Some of them are in jail because they end up committing crimes. So we are failing the citizens of this country by not having education, the free basic education. Now, some students will make it, and those students who make it will end up going to university. Help will kick in. After we finish with free basic compulsory education, we then need to look at how we're going to handle TVET, because not all students will go to university. But one step at a time, we need to actually start this movement where we as MPs and leaders, with the various funds that we have, agree that we need to actually push the Ministry of Education oversight, provide the budget, so the Ministry of Education can provide free secondary education. What do I mean by free secondary education? I don't mean that we only provide